Sunday night in London was supposed to be a celebration of cinema. The Royal Festival Hall was filled with some of the biggest names in film, royalty in the audience, cameras rolling for a national broadcast. And then, in a moment that stopped the room, a voice rang out from the crowd. A racial slur, sharp and unmistakable, cutting through the ceremony just as two celebrated black actors stepped to the podium. What happened next would be replayed, debated, and discussed across the world before the night was over. The voice belonged to John Davidson, a 54-year-old Scottish man who has spent decades doing something most people would find exhausting and deeply personal, advocating publicly for awareness of Tourette syndrome. Davidson was not a random attendee. He was the reason many people in that room were there. His life is the subject of the British independent film I Swear, one of the evening's most talked about entries. But knowing who he was and why he was there didn't make the moment any less jarring for the people on stage. So who exactly is John Davidson, and how did his story end up at the center of Britain's most prestigious film ceremony? Davidson became the unlikely face of Tourette syndrome when he was just a teenager. The condition itself is neurological in nature, characterized by involuntary motor and vocal tics that the person experiencing them cannot control. These tics can range from physical movements like twitching or blinking to vocal outbursts including sounds, words, or phrases. A smaller subset of people with Tourette's, roughly 10% or fewer by most clinical estimates, experience what is known as coprolalia, which involves the involuntary utterance of socially inappropriate or offensive language. Davidson is among that group. His advocacy work has centered on educating the public about this reality, pushing back against the assumption that people who shout slurs or profanities are doing so out of malice or intent. Before the ceremony even began, organizers took the unusual but considered step of warning the audience. Attendees were told they might hear involuntary noises or tics from someone in the crowd. That kind of preemptive communication does not happen casually at a high-profile awards show. It reflects a deliberate decision to include Davidson in the event fully, not to hide him away or seat him somewhere out of earshot of the microphones. And when the moment came, the hall responded with applause. But what about the people standing directly in the line of fire when it happened? Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo were at the podium presenting the first award of the evening for special visual effects, which went to Avatar: Fire and Ash. When the slur rang out from the audience, Lindo's reaction was visible and immediate. He looked stunned. The word that reached him was not abstract. It was a racial slur, directed at no one in particular, but landing squarely on two black men standing in front of a room full of people and cameras. Lindo composed himself and moved forward with the presentation. Jordan did the same. Their professionalism in that moment was noted widely. But the question that followed almost immediately was, how does the host explain something like this to a room that includes, among others, Prince William and Princess Catherine? Alan Cumming, the Scottish actor and entertainer hosting the evening, stepped up more than once to address what the audience was hearing. His language was careful and clear. He explained to the crowd that Tourette syndrome is a recognized disability and that the tics being heard throughout the night were involuntary, meaning the person experiencing them had no control over the words being produced. He thanked the audience for their understanding and their composure, and he offered an apology to anyone who had been offended. He did not apologize for Davidson's presence. The distinction is worth noting. Cummings' framing raised its own set of questions. If the audience inside the Royal Festival Hall was informed ahead of time, and if the broadcast was being aired by the BBC with what was described as a significant delay, why did the moment make it to air at all? The BBC, when contacted for comment, reiterated the message of understanding that Cumming had already delivered to the live audience. It did not address why the production team chose not to cut the audio during the delay. That decision, or lack of one, is what turned a contained moment inside a hall into a global conversation. Whether that outcome serves Davidson's cause for awareness or complicates it is a question that people are still working through. Davidson himself had anticipated the evening with a mix of pride and anxiety. Speaking to reporters on the red carpet before the ceremony, he was open about what the night might bring. He explained that certain environments, crowds, noise, heightened emotion, unfamiliar situations tend to increase the frequency and intensity of his tics. A major awards ceremony with photographers, strangers, bright lights, and the weight of seeing his own life story nominated for recognition was precisely the kind of high-stimulation environment that could bring more tics to the surface. He was not in denial about it. He was present anyway. That choice in itself is part of the story. The film at the center of all of this, I Swear, was directed by Kirk Jones and stars Robert Aramayo in the role of Davidson. Aramayo is a 33-year-old English actor who prepared for the part by spending significant time studying Davidson directly. He asked him detailed questions about the mechanics of his tics, where they come from, what triggers them, what the internal experience is like. That kind of preparation tends to show on screen, and it showed at the BAFTAs. Aramayo won the award for Best Leading Actor, beating out nominees that included Leonardo DiCaprio and Timothée Chalamet. It was one of the evening's genuine surprises. Aramayo, accepting the award, acknowledged the room with visible disbelief, looking out at DiCaprio as he spoke. He also paused to address fellow nominee Ethan Hawke, crediting a talk Hawke had given at Juilliard with changing his own perspective as a young actor. It was a gracious, unrehearsed feeling moment in the evening that had already seen more than its share of the unexpected. I Swear has performed well in British cinemas, earning around $8 million in the UK box office so far. It's scheduled for a United States release in April, and the combination of its BAFTA wins and the global attention generated by Sunday's events will almost certainly shape how American audiences receive it. Emma McNally, the chief executive of Tourette's Action, a British advocacy organization, said the film has already done meaningful work in shifting public understanding of the condition. Decades of quiet campaigning by Davidson had laid a foundation. The film built on it, and Sunday night, in a way no one could have scripted, extended it further. The broader awards picture heading into the Oscars is clearer than it was a week ago. The film One Battle After Another had a dominant night at the BAFTAs, winning 6 awards including Best Picture, Best Director, Adapted Screenplay, Cinematography, Editing, and Best Supporting Actor for Sean Penn, who beat out both Stellan Skarsgård and Benicio del Toro. That combination of wins puts it in serious contention for a potential sweep in Hollywood. Sinners won 3 awards, including Best Supporting Actress for Wunmi Mosaku. Frankenstein also took 3. Hamnet, which had entered the evening with significant expectations after winning Best Motion Picture Drama at the Golden Globes, largely came away disappointed, with only Jessie Buckley's Best Actress win adding to its tally of outstanding British film. Timothée Chalamet, widely expected to take the Best Actor prize for Marty Supreme, left London without one. He reportedly had a speech prepared and did not get to use it. His path to the Oscar still looks clear, with Aramayo not eligible in that category, but London was not his night. For an actor his age with his level of fame, that kind of loss in front of an audience that included, among others, Prince William and Princess Catherine, tends to define how a season is remembered. What the BAFTA ceremony will most be remembered for, though, is not any of the trophies. It is the image of a man sitting in the audience of one of the world's most watched cultural events, unable to control his voice, while the room he was sitting in chose, by and large, to respond with patience rather than outrage. Davidson has spent his adult life trying to get people to understand that Tourette's syndrome is not a punchline and not a character flaw. Sunday night gave him the largest audience he has ever had for that message. Whether people received it the way he intended is something that will unfold in the days and weeks ahead, particularly as his film prepares to reach American audiences for the first time.